Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. This is a public meeting for MMMPO and Mountain Line Transit plan to the year 2025. We want to engage the public on some of the technical analysis that we undergo on a plan like this, why we do a plan like this, where we're heading, and then get community feedback as well, both in this meeting and then subsequently from people watching a recording, and then also from an online survey that we have and some other methods as well. So what we're going to talk about here today is the background of the planning process. What is this this transit plan about? Considering recent events, here in September of 2020, we've all experienced several months of twists and turns. So we want to consider how that impacts transit going forward when we think about creating a viable plan for the future. We want to go over some early findings, some preliminary existing conditions, and then go over some of the public input that we got previously, and then with an eye towards some recommendations for the future. So when we think about the background of the planning process, this is really what we're calling a short to medium term strategic plan for transit in the region. Many people watching this may know that Mountain Line is the main transit provider in the county and in Morgantown. And a plan like this is really about collaborating with the community. We want to identify transit improvements both in the short term, approximately to the year 2023, as well as a little bit longer term, over the next half decade or so to the year 2025. The study did begin in fall of 2019. It's commenced throughout 2020. We've taken a little step back to consider some of the recent events, and then we'll be concluding here in 2020. When we look at a framework for a transit plan like this, we look at that public input, trying to collaborate on solutions going forward, those existing and future conditions, emerging trends and best practices. We see that transit and transportation in general are really changing rapidly, not only in the region, but also across the United States and even worldwide. So we want to always take a look at what we're doing and try to bring in those best practices going forward and acknowledge that there's limited resources. So how do we most effectively deploy the resources that we have and that we can plan for to enhance that customer experience and help drive the community forward? When we think about recent events, we have the COVID-19 pandemic that really started hitting in spring. Some of our last public facing events were, I think, on March 5th or so, and that was right before many things began to shut down. And of course, we are still feeling the effects of that across the board, with certain entertainment destinations still being shut down, with universities being remote, elementary schools being remote, some hybrid models out there, but we're all navigating this unknown environment in our own ways across society, and that affects transit in the region in ways we'll talk about. There's also the economic downturn, that impacts transit service and transit usage. We see that getting people to jobs is one of the key drivers of transit ridership historically. So when many fewer people have jobs than at the start of 2020, how does that impact transit ridership going forward? And then we also see a recent acknowledgement of social justice issues, of things that may perpetuate inequalities in society, and transit being a driver of positive change to alleviate those issues and help support a positive path forward. So when we think about COVID-19, we see, and there's a variety of impacts. One is, there's uncertain travel demand across all modes. So for driving, for transit usage, for airline travel, across the board, there's many changes that are changing month to month that we're all keeping an eye on. We see in many cases transit ridership is below what it was at the start of 2020. But we do see that creeping back up. In some cases, there's health concerns of folks because they do not want to get sick, or certain activities have been shut down due to health concerns. Mountain Lion has been at the forefront of navigating this unknown health environment with public health professionals, with others in the industry, trying to create a safe traveling environment, and has been quite successful in doing that so far. There's also certain trends that we see over time, over recent years, such as working from home, that have accelerated now that many people are working remotely. We see that there's a little bit of a temporary impact on that, but we see that trend building over time. And when COVID-19 is in the rearview mirror, we do see that more people, the data is showing, may work from home as a normal occurrence. Maybe it's 1 day a week, 2 days a week. Maybe more jobs will be all working remotely. So there's many changes on that front. We see online and remote learning from elementary school to university students. And we see an increased realization of the importance of transit for essential services and workers. So for that person trying to get to their job at a grocery store, for that nurse trying to get to her shift at a hospital on a Sunday afternoon, we see that transit is a driver of those essential workers getting to those essential services. And transit is actually an essential service in and of itself to keep the community going forward. So when we consider these impacts, we think temporary versus long term. When we think 5 years ahead to the year 2025, when our plan will conclude, the virus, the public health officials tell us, will likely be overcome in time. It'll be in our past. However, economic recessions such as this can have long-term effects that affect not only transit ridership, but just the way the community moves forward in a way differently than how we started 2020. But we see that transit remains vital to educational access and economic opportunity. So we want to try to deploy it as effectively as possible going forward. When we think about some of our preliminary findings and how we plan for transit, of where the vehicle should go, who they should pick up, we look at a data-driven process. So one is residential density. Where do people live? That's a key driver of transit service. And then we look at job density. Where are those jobs, and where are the workers at those jobs located? So we want to connect these two and make sure that we could get people to jobs, to economic opportunity. This is a data-driven analysis where we see things like automobile ownership, economic levels, housing unit locations, populations of students, of elderly folks. And we see that in some cases, if there's households in a rural area that have access to several vehicles, then they may not want transit on their road, and they may not need transit. So we could deploy that more effectively to other areas that do need it for certain reasons. So we want to have data drive our planning process going forward. Much has evolved with the transit network. Pre-COVID, we did have over 24 transit routes in the region, in urban areas, in rural areas, connecting cities. And like every transit agency across the country and around the world over the past 6 months, there's been many evolutions to the routes as we've reemerged and reopened due to COVID. But this shows that we do have a robust transit system in the region, and we want to build on this and maybe refine it going forward. When we think about some of the public input that we obtained both through stakeholder engagement at the end of 2019, and then public engagement concluding around that first week in March of 2020. We saw that we got a lot of great input. We had in-person meetings, so we went to places like Mountaineer Station. We had a public open house. We were at Evansdale Crossing, the Westover Transit Hub, going to where people are and asking them, how do you get around town? What are your key needs when you think about transit going forward, and what do you want to see in the community going forward? And we got a lot of great input doing that, reaching people where they are. We also used online engagement, an online survey, an online interactive map where people could provide input with ease from their smartphone or from their computer. We had surveys to riders on the buses. So as you can imagine, when we gather comments from a variety of people, both on the buses, when they're shopping, when they're going to class, when they have their lunch break from work on their computer, we start to get a diversity of ideas from many different people, and we bring that all into the planning process. So we got hundreds of comments, and what we did find is that there's some key findings. One was there was a desire for additional bus service throughout the day as well as on weekends. So, this is buses earlier, buses later, as well as more transit service on Saturdays and Sundays. So that was something that people highlighted again and again. They also desired more frequent routes. So on some of those key corridors, maybe not having to wait as long in between when buses come, having those come more often throughout the day. Better customer information. This is one transit agencies everywhere struggle with, especially in this time of so much information available to everybody at all times. How do you hone in on the specific information that customer needs to catch their bus, get to where they need to go on that given day? And ultimately, it was a good story. The comments revealed high satisfaction with the current customer riding experience, but there was a request for more service. So it's as if we put a product out and everybody really likes it, but they're asking for more of it. There's not enough of it. So that's a good spot for us to be in, getting input like that when we think about the years ahead. When we think about draft recommendations going forward, there's a geographic focus to it based on our data-driven analysis. We want to emphasize service where it's most effective in denser land uses that support transit. So when there's more people living there, more people working there, more people going to the university, that's where we want to emphasize service, emphasize that frequency on those key corridors. In lower density areas, we have an option with new emerging trends, such as one that's called micro-transit service that could be appropriate to lower demand. So micro-transit is a flexible, on-demand service offering that transit agencies are starting to provide around the country. And it utilizes a smartphone app, or you could call ahead as well. And you could really schedule a trip pretty easily that a small vehicle can come pick you up, pick up others along the way. There's algorithms that are advancing routing software that could get you where you need to go efficiently with a high level of customer service, while not having to wait for perhaps an hour for a fixed route bus to come. So we see opportunities to evolve our service offerings going forward. When we think about our key initiatives in the framework for recommendations, we see there's really 5 buckets of information. One initiative is improving how buses travel, then improving the street infrastructure to support transit, improving customer information, engaging with emerging technology and new mobility, and then partnering. That idea of partnering, collaborating to support access to opportunity. These are our 5 key initiatives that create the framework for the future. The first one, improving how buses travel. This can take several forms. One is increasing the frequency of key routes. So rather than having a longer wait time between buses, you can actually shorten that up to provide higher frequency. You can change routes so that they go earlier in the day, later in the day, increasing the bus service on the weekends. As we've seen, many jobs at shopping centers, many students accessing services at universities, many workers at grocery stores, at hospitals. They don't follow a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday schedule. It's really an emerging trend to try to provide that 7-day-a-week service as much as possible given the resources that you have. And then also increasing the directness of routes where feasible. So trying to get from point A to point B as you would in a car trip as much as possible without many deviations and roundabout travel options, trying to create that directness as much as possible. The next initiative is improving street infrastructure to support transit. And Mountain Line and the city have already made strides on several of these initiatives. We see a desire from the community for a little bit more formality on the street infrastructure, so bus stops and shelters where feasible. They may not be feasible everywhere. There could be limited sidewalk options or no sidewalk. There could be challenges with other competing infrastructures, such as bike racks and things like that. But we see an opportunity where feasible to increase the level of bus stops and shelters along key routes. Alongside that is additional street lighting and seating. We see an opportunity to not only improve the customer experience, the waiting environment, but also support placemaking across transit corridors as well, making sure that that the street infrastructure supports transit, and then transit supports the greater amenities across the street as well. And then also wayfinding, directional signing, signage that provides real-time information. So either digital or just static signs that identify where the bus is coming, when is it coming, where does it go, and that sort of thing for people on the street. Our third key initiative is improving customer information. We want to build upon the success of the smartphone app to increase reliability. Many people applauded the smartphone app that currently exists, but wanted to build upon that to fix some bugs here and there and to try to provide even additional information. So we want to try to build upon those customer information successes we have. We also want to streamline some of the information on the website. This is something that transit agencies can struggle with everywhere. There's a lot of information to provide to every customer. How do you get the specific information that a certain customer needs efficiently and effectively? So there's some ideas on that going forward. Improving on-street information at top bus stops and connection locations. So where there's connectivity between Mountain Line and a PRT station, we can have additional on-street information. And then also trying to potentially simplify route information where feasible, trying to get to the essential information that customers need while not providing extra confusion on how to ride the transit system. So these are all some initiatives that can form sort of a guiding light or a North Star going forward. Our fourth key initiative is engaging with emerging technology and new mobility. This includes what we discussed with microtransit, implementing that service where fixed routes are not viable to appropriately meet low demand. We see fixed route service being the backbone of transit service going forward, but there's a way to more effectively deploy some resources in fixed routes that may go to areas of lower demand and not many people ride them. We could change those into microtransit offerings. So this would involve a person on a smartphone requesting a flexible on-demand trip at a certain time, or they could call ahead and the transit vehicle can come, pick them up, pick up others along the way, drop off others along the way, and all in all, it's a little bit more flexible transit offering that we're seeing emerge in cities and communities across the country. We can also continue to enhance digital tools to improve customer information, and we could collaborate on innovative solutions to enhance a seamless customer experience across the transportation system. So, many times people who are riding a bus, a pedestrian on the street, a bicyclist going to class, somebody who is parking a car in an on-street parking space. In many circumstances, these are the same constituents. These are the same community members, just using a diversity of transportation options. And what we see is through technological solutions, increased seamless connectivity among these different transportation options to really help drive the region forward. And alongside that is continuing to partner to support access to opportunity. That idea of collaboration is inherent in this study's existence with the MPO, with Mountain Line, with stakeholders like the university and the city and others planning together with the community of what transit should look like going forward. We want to continue that pillar of partnership across a lot of agencies to deliver access to education, jobs, and civic life. And what we see is that in the new transportation environment that's really evolving rapidly, not only in the region, but also across the nation and worldwide, is that collaboration is really what drives success in the new mobility ecosystem. So we see a breaking down of the silos of this mode of transportation, that mode of transportation, this government agency or that government agency, and we see a merging and a blending of transportation service offerings, a merging of the way community members get around town, and that trend is really driving success going forward in many cases. So we want to continue that trend of partnership that already strongly exists in the community. When we think about a framework to guide us to the year 2025, we think about improving how the buses travel, improving the street infrastructure to support transit, improving customer information, engaging with new technologies, and then partnering to support access to opportunity. With that, we will open it up to comments and feedback and questions. Going forward, our next steps, we have an online survey that was posted at the start of the presentation and at the end. We have a public meeting. We have additional events on Facebook. And we want to encourage you to take our survey, provide additional comments, and ask us any questions you have here as well. So thank you so much.